Okay, everyone, welcome to this special shir in memory of Frankie and Stephen's father, Azriel ben David, Eric Samson, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, of blessed memory. I'm just going to share my screen. Everyone can let me know if they see it so we can all access the same Mishna. And, okay, I believe I've shared it. Everyone sees it? Everyone sees the Mishnah over here? Great. I'm assuming I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. Here we go. So this Mishnah, thank you, Stephen. So this Mishnah is a very interesting Mishnah in the sense that up until this point, the first three Mishnayot of Pirkei Avot, all are a transmission of the Torah starting from individual generational leaders. So, for example, in the first Mishnah, we'll have Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and then we'll go down to we have the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, which are the men of the Great Assembly, and slowly we find an expansion, and this is the first Mishnah where we have more than one leader together. Why is that? The reason is because up until this point, each generational leader, so let's take Moses, for example, he alone had the capacity to transmit the entire Torah alone by himself. As time went on, that deteriorated. And this is the first Mishnah where we have, they're called zugot, which means couples or groups. And this Mishnah is Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan. And the reason for that is because in this Mishnah, we have the first generation where only together are they able to properly transmit the entire Torah. This is the link from the Torah Shebechtav, which is the Torah, the 5 books that we have. And this is the link that will connect us to Mishnayot and then the Talmud, the Gemara. Now, when we learn this particular Mishnah, we're going to see, I don't think it's a coincidence that this is the first Mishnah that is learned when we start the Zugot, the groups, because this whole idea, the whole concept of this Mishnah is all about learning from other people. So when one person doesn't know everything by himself, then he needs to rely on his friend in order to gain more knowledge. So let's start the Mishnah. So the first statement of the Mishnah is I'm reading over here, Yihi beitcha beit vad lachachamim, which means that one's house should be a gathering place for chachamim, for sages, for wise people. So the first question is, what is the signifier of a Jewish home? How can you distinguish what is a Jewish home? What's the difference between a home that is connected and a home that's not connected? So the Talmud in Tractate Eruvin says that a home that is not connected is a home that uses its 4 walls to block everything out from the outside and keep everything that's important on the inside, right? Almost creating a barrier between the home and the outside world, right? I can do what I want in my home. No one's going to bother me. Everyone's going to leave me alone. Now, the Talmud does not give this such a positive name. It calls it, this type of home, a dira shel behema, which translates to the dwelling space of an animal. Why? Because there's no higher purpose other than just privacy. Leave me alone, right? I want to do my thing at home and I don't need you here. On the contrary, a Jewish home, a home that is connected, is the exact opposite. This is a home that the walls are not meant to keep others out, but rather to invite people in. This is the concept in Hebrew, a bayit, a home. It gives you the opportunity to do what you can, and you would not be able to do it in the street, right? You want to host people, you want to host a myriad of guests. I mean, maybe seasonally you might be able to do something in the street, but it's not yours, right? You don't have the freedom to execute as you wish. A home offers you the opportunity to do as you wish, to bring as many people in as you can. Now, why is it crucial? Why is the Mishnah telling us that it's crucial to make a home a greeting place for sages, for wisdom, for knowledge, for other people? So if you think about it, a home, what the first thing you notice when you come into home, that is almost the identifier of what the house is, what it is about. For example, if If you walk into a house and the first thing you see is a massive bar with tons of different types of alcohol, so the impression you're going to get is that this homeowner, right, he likes drinking. Great. Okay. On the other hand, if you walk into a home and you see a massive bookshelf with Torah books, philosophical books, scientific books, this is an educated person. This is someone who appreciates education. As a parent, inviting wise people, inviting sages or rabbis into your home teaches your family that this is important to you. Don't worry, okay, they're not on the same level as me, right? They're on a higher level than I am. I'm not on their level. That is the point. The point is to invite people into your home that you feel they can make a major impression on you. And that alone is worth the experience, and it teaches your family this is important. So my parents are on this Zoom call, and this story speaks to me quite personally. Let's say now about 7 years ago, my grandparents, who were living in Chicago at the time, were getting elderly, and the time came for them to move out of their own house. They couldn't live alone anymore. And my parents weren't sure what to do, right? Where should they go? And my mother and father came up with the idea, this was my mother's parents, that they're going to move to our house. So my family is from Queens, New York. My wife and I have the privilege of living in Jerusalem, but originally I'm from Queens. And my parents were going to build them an extension, and they were going to live with my parents in New York. Now, this obviously entailed a lot of thought, and it would be a lot of work. One, obviously first building the extension, making sure that it was wheelchair accessible, etc. But on a broader scale, you're inviting two people into your life. Obviously, there are grandparents, and we were very close to them, but you're inviting two people in your life that require a lot of attention and detail. And it can turn a house into a house of turmoil if not handled properly. And at the time, many of the children, not me, obviously, I was completely in, but a lot of the children, were hesitant. Should we do it? Should we not? No, it doesn't make sense. It's too much. It's gonna cause, right? I had younger siblings at the time. They wouldn't get the attention from my parents. In the end, my parents went through with it. And it could be at the time, some of the siblings were hesitant about the move. But looking back, it was one of the greatest gifts my parents gave us. Because eventually we learned to realize that my parents had showed us the importance of family, the importance of grandparents, the importance of people with knowledge, people with experience, people with wisdom. And, I wasn't even living at home at the time. I was already studying in yeshiva in Israel. But every time I came back home for holidays, for smachot, just the experience of living with my grandparents on a day-to-day basis was incredible. My youngest brother, his name is Dovi, he gained such an incredible relationship with my grandparents in those few years. And when it started, everyone was like, no, it's too much. I think this Mishnah just relates to this story, because this story is all about, understanding that we have a responsibility to show our kids what's important in our life. And that's exactly what they did. Now the next part of the Mishnah is the next statement is Vehevei mitabek ba'afar ragleim, which means one should sit in the dust of their feet. This concept builds off what we have stated, right? Always look for opportunities to host people, right? Host great people, learn from them, be inspired from them. You can even learn from the dust of their feet. This reminds me of another story. There's a great rabbi who was once fundraising for his particular institution. I don't remember where it was from. And he was, he had arranged for a meeting in this wealthy person's home. Upon arrival, he decided that it was muddy outside. He decided that he was gonna walk through the side door, enter through the side door. And when he would enter through the side door, then he wouldn't, ruin the front hallway where there were presumably a nice carpet, etc. The wealthy man comes outside and confronts him by the side door. And he says to him, Rabbi, if you come through the side door, you're killing my children. What do you mean I'm killing your children? So the man explained to him, he said, Rabbi, if I allow you to come through my side door, what will my kids think? My kids will think that it's much more, if everyone could just mute, yeah, thank you. Everyone will assume that the reason why I let him go through my side door only is because I don't want him to ruin my hallway, right? I have a nice, expensive hallway, and if his muddy feet touch that carpet, it's going to ruin it. And he says, Chas v'shalom. I want my kids to know that hosting a holy person in my house is way more important than having a clean carpet. That's crucial. It's vital to me, vital to the education of my kids. Now, Frankie and Stephen, who we have the great privilege of being quite close with, have made it very clear to me. I only met Eric later on in his life, but Eric was one who constantly hosted great people in his home. Whether it was major decisions for the future of South Africa, the future of Israel, hospital shortages, smart mobility, and all the myriad of institutions that Eric was involved in. The meeting point was always at the Samsons, because to them, it was so important to bring these holy, incredible projects into their house, make that essential theme, essential part of their life. This was his dream. His dream was not to, only help people, but to bring it into his family, make it part of his family. Now let's transition to the final part of the Mishnah. The final statement is which means, it translates that one should drink in the words of the wise thirstily. The Maharal, a classic commentator on Pirkei Avot, explains that one's approach must be that whatever wisdom he has in life, there's always more. And from great people, I can learn so much. I need to soak in every single drop. Every second counts. Right? This lesson also teaches us that we must value our time, right? With wise people. Every single second counts. I had the privilege of studying in Israel under a rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz. He's now the head of Yeshivat Esha Torah in the Old City. And when I was studying under him, so he's a very, very busy man. And they gave us very limited access to him, but was more access than others. Once a week, each student in the yeshiva was allowed a 3-minute meeting with him. Now, I want to tell you, the first time I had a 3-minute meeting with him, I was completely overwhelmed. I don't know how you limit, you pack in a meeting into 3 minutes. It's like time. You see a timer on the wall. I remember the first one, I was like stumbling through. I introduced myself. I tried asking one question, asking for some advice, and I barely got through it. But honestly, as time went on, I learned to appreciate every second. And I learned how to come in with the 3-minute meeting and just sit down and Rabbi, boom, jump right in. Because that was the way, for me to learn how to understand now I have 3 minutes with him. I'm one of many. Everyone wants to have 3 minutes with him, but I'm going to use it. And I learned to absolutely maximize those 3 minutes. Took a lot of training, but eventually we worked it out. Now, another interesting idea about this Mishnah. So after grouping this Mishnah together, we realized that this Mishnah, the classic approach is like we've stated, making sure to yourself, to your family, that wisdom, higher, holy people is important in your life. Maybe we're not so holy ourselves. Maybe we're striving to be holier. But step number one is showing them how much you invest in that, how much you care about that, right? Appreciate every second. Bring it into your house. Show how it's so much more important than all the other worldly possessions you have. That's a valuable lesson. And this, as we said, is the first lesson of the groups, because we're showing the importance of learning from other people. Now, it's interesting how we, right, in Hebrew, we call a wise person a Talmid Chacham. Now, let me ask you, if someone's a wise person, he's a Chacham. What's a Talmid Chacham? So the answer is, like we touched upon before, a Talmid Chacham is someone who, while he is a wise person, is constantly looking to learn more. A genuine wise person is one who is a perpetual student. Even though he's a Chacham, he still wants to be lomed. He's a Talmid. He wants to learn. He wants to constantly learn. In the world of medicine, once upon a time, a doctor trained in his apprentice. His apprentice studied under him. And then when he got to a certain point, he felt he was ready. Amazing. The apprentice became a doctor himself. And that was his ceiling, right? He just practiced what he knew for the rest of his life. More recently, there's a concept called CME, continuous medical education. A doctor is never done learning and improving. Okay, right? He becomes an MD, he even becomes a PhD, whatever it is. But that's not the ceiling. The ceiling constantly, right, goes higher and higher and higher because there's always more to learn. So too in Judaism, there's no top of the mountain. We're constantly hiking up the mountain in search of new heights, of greater heights. Watching Eric's yahrzeit video, the video that they put out, Eric's smile and his warmth was mentioned over and over and over again. But Eric was so much more than that warmth and that smile. He constantly made every person who he ever met feel like that they had something to teach him. He greeted them with a smile, but he also made them feel that they were going to be able to educate him. And to me, that is a true Talmid Chacham. And finally, the last point I would make from this Mishnah, and with this we'll close, is that we cannot control all the circumstances in our life. We're going to encounter numerous challenges in our lives and we'll fail miserably many times. What's the challenge? The challenge is we have to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and start again. But what can we control? We can control who we surround ourselves with. Our social circles will play a major role in our life. It will determine, it'll shape who we are as people. Making your home a meeting point for wise people and knowledge is a major step. It's you declaring that this is what you wish to be surrounded with. This is important to you. A couple of weeks ago, the parasha was Parashat Va'era. And in that story, God tells Moses that he must return to Paro. He must return to Pharaoh. And why will Pharaoh acknowledge him? He'll impress him. He's going to impress him. So he instructs Moshe and his brother Aaron to take a holy staff and throw it in front of Paro. And when he throws it in front of Paro, it's going to magically turn into a serpent. And then, Paro will know, okay, I must take them seriously. Rabbi Meir Shapiro, of blessed memory, explains that if you take a holy object and you put it in the worst of circumstances, it's going to cave. You take a holy staff and you put it in front of, an evil king, in front of Pharaoh, it's going to transform into a lowly serpent. However, the Torah continues. And the Torah says that when Moshe will reach out for the staff, it's going to revert back into a staff. It'll change from serpent back into a staff. And Rabbi Shapiro explains, he says, this concept is so powerful because, many of us have the unique opportunity of constantly being surrounded by holy people. And that's what we have an affinity for. But some of us don't. Some of us either aren't allowed that opportunity or some of us don't care for it. But this idea of taking something that's from the lowest of the low and bringing it to the holy, holy staff of Hashem, teaches us that it's never too late. Our surroundings have a major impact on us, right? You could take a beautiful piece of gold, but if you put it in the mud, it's going to get dirty. But when you clean it off, it'll become gold again. The same idea. Be like Eric Samson. Be a person who makes sure that a staple of his home is holy people, wisdom, knowledge, reaching for great, great levels. Show your children, show your family, show your friends that this is what's important to you. Okay, you have other possessions. It's nice, of course, but to give to other people and to make your home a place where people feel like they're constantly welcome all the time. I don't have four walls to close you off. I have four walls to greet you in. That was Eric Samson. And we want to wish a nechama, a long life to Sheila and to Frankie and Stephen and to the rest of the extended family. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to give this class. We at the Brownstone Tel Aviv thank the Samsons and the Cohens for all they do for us. And may Eric Samson, may his neshama have an aliyah. Wishing the family a long life. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great night.
Always welcome him in our heart.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the love.